Hello there, my fellow music lovers. Thank you so much for dropping by and hanging out at this channel and for doing all that you do, leaving comments and subscribing and the thumbs up and the thumbs down. I really do appreciate it. And I wanted to ask you a question. Do you remember the Buggles? Yeah, I'm talking about that band from the late 70s who had that one-hit wonder, Video Killed a Radio Star. I always thought that was kind of a cheeseball kind of song, you know. It was written in about an hour, and it kind of shows. But it was a strangely prophetic song too, you know, with MTV right around the corner. Certainly there were bands who didn't really have the look. And so once you started looking at these guys on a day-to-day basis or at all, it all kind of fell apart for them, unfortunately. And then there were bands too who maybe had no talent, but they had the looks and they blew up in the 80s. That's a whole nother story though. But Trevor Horn and Jeff Downes were the Buggles. They were a two-piece band, and they have made a lot of impact on the music industry. Of course, Jeff Downes, the keyboard player, went on to form Asia. He was in Yes. He's in Yes now as their keyboard player. Trevor Horn also went on to join Yes. He went on to produce them, and he also produced a lot of other bands who had a lot of breakthrough albums and success with Trevor Horn. I would say Trevor Horn is probably one of the most valuable pickups that Yes ever made. Of course, you know, getting Steve Howe and Rick Wakeman in the 70s was major for them. They helped to define their sound. But when they got Trevor Horn, they really were picking up a very valuable piece to their overall puzzle that helped them get through the 80s and beyond. And so, you know, when you think about it, the Buggles, they're a very unlikely choice to join Yes. In the late 70s, Jon Anderson and Rick Wakeman left Yes. They had had enough. For the first time, Yes was without a singer and without Jon Anderson. Now, they had dealt with Rick Wakeman coming and going before. That was no big deal. But to lose Jon Anderson, the voice of Yes, was huge. And so Chris Squire and Steve Howe and Alan White wanted to further Yes. And so Chris Squire saw this band, the Buggles, and he thought, you know, a singer and a keyboard player, maybe they would fit in with Yes. That's exactly what we need, right? And so, you know, I know that if I was a fan of Yes in the 70s, because you have to keep in mind, and I've talked about this, I came in during the 90125 album, which was in the 80s. If I was a Yes fan in the 70s, and I heard that the Buggles were going to join Yes to replace Jon Anderson and Rick Wakeman, I probably would have shit. And I would think a lot of other fans out there would have probably been beside themselves, like, what the hell are the Buggles doing joining Yes? And if you were a fan in the 70s, I'd love to hear from you to kind of get your input on what the hell was going through your head during this time period. So anyway, the Buggles joined Yes, and they put this album out called Drama in 1980. And it was a pretty decent album. It's got some good stuff on it. But as far as touring went, it really wasn't well received, especially over in Europe. Trevor Horn was having a hard time hitting the high notes of Jon Anderson. The fans just weren't having it, and they were throwing shit at Trevor Horn when he was up on stage. And he just figured, you know what, let's just stop this. And so there never was a second album with Trevor Horn after that album Drama in 1980. He decided to leave Yes, and he wanted to become a producer, kind of wanted to get on the other side of the microphone. And so he wound up a couple of years later producing the 90125 album that Yes came out with when they teamed up with Trevor Rabin. I talked about this in a video that I made recently. Trevor Horn produced 90125. He heard the demo for Owner of a Lonely Heart that Trevor Rabin brought in. When he heard the chorus of Owner, he knew there was a hit there. He just had to build a song around it. And I talked about this too in my interview with Jon Anderson, which I'll also put up a link for. You know, Trevor Horn was becoming quite a brilliant producer, and he put just an amazing finishing touch on Owner of a Lonely Heart, turned it into this #1 hit single. You know, Yes went from literally having nothing going on. All of a sudden now they're, you know, one of the hottest bands in the world, #1 hit single, totally revived them, and a lot of that is credited to Trevor Horn and the focus that he had to get that album into good shape and to give them that big hit single. And Trevor Horn, that was his thing. He was a producer. And the year before the 90125 album, he produced a band called ABC, who you may recall had a couple of really big hits in the 80s with The Look of Love and Poison Arrow. That was from their album, The Lexicon of Love. That was Trevor Horn. He produced that. And also in the year after 90125, he produced an album called Welcome to the Pleasure Dome by Frankie Goes to Hollywood. Remember that song, Relax, and Two Tribes? Great songs from the 80s. That's Trevor Horn. He also went on to produce this great single in '86 by Godley and Cream, who used to be in a band called 10cc. They put this song out called Cry, which was a pretty decent hit. Always loved that song. The video is really, really cool. I'm going to put a link to all this stuff below, so be sure to check out downstairs for some more links. Yeah, Godley and Cream, Cry was an excellent song. And then don't forget, in 1990, he produced Seal's debut album. And of course, Seal had a great song, Crazy, which was a major hit. And that's Trevor Horn. Trevor Horn produced a lot of other artists. I'm just scratching the surface. He worked with the Pet Shop Boys and, you know, Spandau Ballet and, you know, a bunch of other bands too. Like I said, check the description below. I'll put links to all this stuff. And so in 2004, there was a tribute concert for Trevor Horn to kind of celebrate the fact that he had produced all these great bands and made these great landmark albums with them. And, you know, it was put out on DVD. I think it was called Produced by Trevor Horn. You may want to look for that. I bought a copy a number of years ago. I'm not sure if it's out of print. But the Buggles performed, ABC, Frankie Goes to Hollywood. Steve Howe actually performs with Frankie because he was on their album. Pet Shop Boys, Seal, Yes is even there. Jon Anderson was not there, but Trevor Rabin and Howe and White and Squire and Jeff Downs, they all performed. They did Owner But Lonely Heart. Trevor Rabin sang the lead vocal, which was really, really cool. Overall, it was a really good show. Like I said, I'll try to find some links and put them down below for you. But I think that Trevor Horn was a major find for Yes. They kind of got him at the beginning of his career, and they just watched him blossom. They benefited from it, having him produce 90125, giving them a #1 hit single. And then, of course, you know, he made landmark albums for ABC and Frankie Goes to Hollywood and Seal. So what do you think? What do you think about Trevor? What do you think about his work in Yes, both in the band and as a producer? What do you think about his work outside of Yes, producing all these great albums? Be sure to comment down below. Give this video a thumbs up if you like it. Hit subscribe too, and I will be back again with more videos.